I stood just outside the marble entrance of Athena on Fifth, the luxury hotel I built from the ground up, and yet my sister Haley blocked the doorway with a smirk. "You can't afford to be here, Charlotte. Just go." Behind her, my mother approached, wearing pearls and a polite sneer. She leaned in close. "Please don't make a scene tonight. It's your father's birthday. Don't embarrass him." The words hit harder than I expected, not because they were cruel, but because they were familiar. Expected. I wasn't on the guest list for the dinner, even though the venue was mine, so I smiled, not because it didn't hurt, but because I knew what was coming. The elevator chimed. The door opened. A tall man in a navy wool coat stepped into the lobby, my father's boss. He glanced around, scanning the crowd, then locked eyes with me. His expression shifted instantly. "Good evening, ma'am," he said. The word echoed like a thunderclap, and just like that, the room fell silent. It wasn't always like this. There was a time I thought if I just worked harder, stayed quieter, gave more, they'd see me, that I wouldn't have to beg for space at the table I helped set. Growing up in the Morgan household meant living inside a carefully curated image. My father George was the architect of it all, stoic, pragmatic, respected. The kind of man who scheduled his own birthday party 6 weeks in advance and expected everyone to attend formal attire, mandatory enthusiasm optional. My mother Linda played the role of executive hostess with a practiced smile. She chose dinner themes the way generals plan invasions, flawless centerpieces, polite conversation scripts, and a complete absence of chaos or contradiction. And then there was Haley, 4 years younger, born with a spotlight in her crib, sparkling, social, magnetic. She didn't just walk into a room, she was the room. She danced through school with perfect grades, nailed internships like they were handed to her on engraved stationery, and became a corporate attorney in New York before she turned 30. Every church bulletin and Christmas card beamed with updates on her rise. Me, I was the footnote. Charlotte's doing something with hotels now, I think Mom would say, waving the question away like a gnat. I became the daughter they mentioned with vague confusion and immediate redirection. No one ever asked what I was building. No one wanted to know. I didn't follow their rules. I didn't marry young, didn't go to grad school, didn't intern at Daddy's firm. I moved cities without warning, worked night shifts, and disappeared into the service industry like some kind of rebellious ghost. But it wasn't rebellion. It was survival. They thought I was running away. I was learning to stand still without vanishing. At 19, I got my first job as a night receptionist at a budget inn just outside Denver. The lobby smelled like lemon cleaner and desperation. The carpet was older than I was, but it was mine, my key, my counter, my first paycheck. I cleaned rooms on weekends, managed laundry orders, took over shifts when people quit. I stayed after hours to read about revenue models and brand positioning, while most of my coworkers smoked behind the dumpster. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't safe. But it was the first thing I had ever done where no one told me I didn't belong. At 25, I'd saved enough to invest as a silent partner in a struggling historic inn, a crumbling Victorian eyesore with termite damage and stained wallpaper. While Haley posted selfies from Manhattan rooftops, I was crawling into basements with an LED flashlight and a clipboard. While my parents forwarded her law school announcements like proud campaign staffers, I was negotiating plumbing estimates and learning how to work QuickBooks with one hand while cleaning mold with the other. Still, I never bragged. Not when the inn turned its first profit, not when I bought out my partner. Not even when I signed the deed to Athena on Fifth. That one felt different. The building had bones, 1930s marble-cracked chandeliers, a forgotten ballroom that smelled like old perfume and broken promises. But I saw it, the soul of the place, the way it could rise again. It took me 18 months, 5 grants, a crew of artisans, and everything I had in savings. I picked every tile, curated the art, personally hired every department head. Athena wasn't just a hotel. It was proof that I could build something no one believed I could. But at every family gathering, I was still the one seated near the kids' table, still the one asked about dating but never about destiny. They thought I was folding towels. I was signing contracts. They thought I worked the front desk. I owned the lobby. When Haley booked Athena on 5th for Dad's birthday and didn't even realize it belonged to me, that's when I knew. They still didn't see me, but they were about to. When the invitation came, it wasn't an invitation at all, just a forwarded email. No greeting, no signature, just a message from Haley. Dinner is at 7:00 p.m. sharp. Formal attire. Don't be late. Please don't make this about you. Not hi, Charlotte. Not we'd love to see you. Not even can you help with the venue. They had chosen my Hotel Athena on 5th and never once thought to ask if I was available, let alone interested. And somehow, I wasn't even formally invited. At first, I stared at the email, waiting for some punchline. Then I reread it. Again. It was real. They were holding my father's 65th birthday in the very building I had restored from literal rubble and still saw me as a potential disruption. Not a host, not a daughter, an embarrassment. The absurdity should have made me laugh, but it didn't. It made something in me crystallize. They hadn't just dismissed me, they had erased me. Haley, with her Excel seating chart and Pinterest menu themes, didn't know the stemware she picked had my initials etched into the base. That the dining room she reserved was called the Winston Suite, named after the retired bellhop, who taught me how to fold napkins like swans when I was 21. My mother didn't know the floral arrangement she requested had been curated by the florist I'd partnered with for a decade. They didn't know the building's entire soul had been redesigned by the daughter they forgot they had. And they didn't ask. That's when I knew I would not correct them. Not now. Not with an email. Not with a phone call. Not with another desperate bid for acknowledgement. This time I would say nothing. They would learn by walking into my world. I picked up the phone and called Avery Ross, my assistant general manager, the one person I trusted to understand what I needed, without needing to explain why. Avery, I said, we're hosting a private event this Saturday. Treat it like royalty. Quietly. Got it. Name Morgan. George Morgan. There was a beat of silence. Your family, she asked carefully. Yes. But don't tell the staff. Not yet. She didn't ask why. That's why I hired her. I want everything flawless. The Winston Suite, crystal glassware, white orchid centerpieces, custom menu grilled salmon citrus beurre blanc, and with the 25-year Kentucky bourbon. Make sure it's decanted before dessert. Anything else? Yes, I said. If anyone asks for me, I'm unavailable. Until I say otherwise. I hung up and stared at the grand lobby from the mezzanine balcony above. The chandeliers glimmered, the marble gleamed. The air smelled like lavender, lemon, and possibility. I had poured my soul into this place. Every square foot, every design choice, every impossible obstacle turned into beauty. It had become my cathedral, and now it would host the same people who once rolled their eyes when I said I worked in hospitality. It wasn't revenge. It was revelation. The night before the dinner, I couldn't sleep. I went up to the rooftop garden, the crown of Athena. It was quiet wind brushing the soft linen tablecloths, string lights swaying like tiny stars. I sat at my favorite table and opened my leather-bound notebook. The first page was still blank. I picked up my pen and wrote, "Being underestimated has a price." Then I paused, and under it wrote, "But being silent is no longer mine to pay. For years I played small to keep the peace. For years I accepted invisibility like it was something noble. Quiet strength, grace, under pressure. But silence without respect is not grace. It's a cage. They didn't see me. Then they could walk into what I'd built, and they'd see everything. I didn't know how I would enter that night. Maybe through the front doors. Maybe with a whisper. Maybe with fire in my eyes. But I knew this, I would no longer shrink. Not for them. Not for anyone. The morning of the dinner, I arrived at Athena on Fifth like any other executive, would early, precise, composed. But this time something shifted inside me. I wasn't just reviewing staffing notes. I was preparing a stage. The very people who thought I was invisible were about to dine in a world I had built by hand, and they wouldn't even know it until it was too late. Avery met me in the staff office with a clipboard full of updates. "Your family's party has ballooned to 32 guests," she said, trying not to laugh. Haley changed the floral theme again. She wants clean opulence with winter tones. And your mother called to ask if a photographer could take a few tasteful candids. She also asked that we avoid photographing you. Her words. I exhaled through my nose. Not rage, just a bone-deep ache. Familiar, cold, understood, I said. Avery watched me for a beat, then softened. "Do you want the staff to know it's your family?" "Not yet," I replied. "Let them walk in like they own the place. Let them see what ownership actually looks like." She nodded, then paused. "Do you want me to have Michael on standby, Michael? Our security lead. Discreet, firm, unshakable. In case someone tries to block the owner from entering," I smirked. "Yeah, keep him close, but out of sight." I spent the next few hours walking every inch of the hotel, every floor, every candlelit hallway, every table setting. In the Winston suite, the long oak dining table gleamed under the glow of antique sconces. Gold-rimmed plates, white orchids, and eucalyptus leaves lined its center. The Bourbon Dad's favorite was breathing in a cut-glass decanter beside the dessert cart. Everything was flawless, because I had made it so. While my family prepared to host a dinner, I had quietly designed an experience, one that would reflect every inch of the woman they refused to see. Back in my suite, I changed into a black floor-length gown. Sleek, architectural, high neckline, bare back, the kind of dress that didn't scream, it whispered with power. As I clasped my earrings, I studied my reflection. I didn't see the girl who once cried in a motel break room because her mother forgot her birthday. I didn't see the teenager who overheard her father say Haley's the one who'll go places. I saw a woman who had built 5 boutique hotels, a woman who had learned contracts, zoning laws, staffing hierarchies, and interior design by sheer necessity. A woman who had crafted her future one unpaid invoice and silent prayer at a time. I took the front stairs, not the service entrance, not this time. The lobby of Athena glowed in soft amber light. A string quartet played near the fireplace. Waitstaff moved like poetry across the floor, offering champagne and quiet smiles. I saw the guests before they saw me. My mother stood by the concierge desk adjusting her pearls and gesturing at something on Haley's clipboard. Haley wore emerald satin in her usual air of control. I stepped forward, and as if summoned by fate, Haley turned. Her eyes narrowed. "You're really here," she said, crossing her arms. "Why wouldn't I be?" I asked calmly. "It's Dad's night, Charlotte, not yours." She glanced around, scanning for staff. "You can't just stroll in uninvited." "I'm not crashing," I said. "I'm simply entering my hotel." That stopped her cold. She blinked, then barked a laugh. "Your hotel. You're delusional." Just then my mother appeared, her voice like glass dipped in honey. "Charlotte," she said, "please don't do this. Don't embarrass your father tonight. We've worked so hard on this. We..." as if I hadn't spent years rebuilding the very walls they now stood beneath. I opened my mouth, but before I could speak, the revolving door turned. Mr. Raymond Callahan entered the lobby. CEO, my father's boss, one of the most powerful real estate moguls in the region. Haley kept talking, oblivious. "If you want, I can ask one of the staff if there's a seat near the wall. Just don't, Miss Morgan," Callahan said, his voice cutting through the room like a gavel. He walked past her, past my mother, his eyes locked on mine. "I didn't expect to see you here," he said warmly. I smiled. "Lovely to see you too, Mr. Callahan." He nodded. "Thank you again for hosting us in such a remarkable venue. Truly, this hotel is a masterpiece." Then loud enough for everyone in the lobby to hear, "Good evening, ma'am." And with that, the lobby froze. The word ma'am didn't just echo, it detonated. You could feel the shift like a dropped champagne glass. The quartet paused mid-measure. A guest near the fireplace turned, a server straightened eyes flicking between us. Haley's mouth parted, then closed. Her eyes scrambled between Mr. Callahan and me, her brain desperately trying to reconcile two incompatible truths: the sister she'd just dismissed, and the woman being greeted with reverence by her father's CEO. My mother blinked rapidly. Her fake smile dropped like a mask sliding off its string. You know Charlotte?" she asked, her voice tighter than I'd ever heard it. Mr. Callahan turned to her politely. "Yes, of course. We've worked together on 2 luxury developments, Chicago and San Diego. Brilliant strategist, one of the sharpest minds in hospitality." He turned back to me, smiling. "Is the rooftop garden still open? I've told half my board about it. And that penthouse suite, your design team outdid themselves." "Thank you," I said evenly. "It's one of my favorite projects." My mother just stared, like she was seeing someone she didn't recognize, because she was. Haley opened her mouth again, ready to throw something sharp, but Avery, my AGM, stepped in just then with surgical timing. "Miss Morgan," she said gently, "the Winston suite is ready whenever you are. Staff is in position. The bourbon has been decanted as requested." I nodded once. "Excellent. I'll join shortly." Haley's skin had gone pale beneath her makeup. "Wait," she snapped. "What is going on?" Mr. Callahan turned to her, his tone still cordial, but now laced with edge. "Are you family?" "I'm her sister," she said quickly. "Then I suggest," he replied, "you show your sister the respect her position warrants, especially in her own establishment." And that was it. No raised voices, no scene. Just one sentence that cracked the entire illusion open. From the corner of my eye, I saw my father approaching from the bar, mid-laugh with 2 older men. He hadn't noticed the growing tension yet. Not until Mr. Callahan turned toward him and gestured. "George," he called out, "your daughter is quite the powerhouse. I had no idea she was your Charlotte." My father's laugh faltered. He looked over, squinted, then registered me. "Charlotte," he said slowly, as if saying my name for the first time. You know Ray." I smiled. "Dad," I said calmly and clearly. "Ray works for me." The room went still again. You could practically hear the ice in the bourbon sweating. My father's eyebrows knit together. What I own Athena on 5th, I said, and 4 other properties. Boutique hotels. This one was my first major acquisition. A beat of silence, then another. Then Mr. Callahan added, almost teasing, "She's my boss on 3 projects, one of our most valuable partners." My father sat down slowly at the head of the long table. His expression was a blend of disbelief and calculation, like he was rereading a chapter he'd skipped years ago. My mother remained standing. She looked like someone had pulled a rug out from under her worldview. Haley didn't sit. She just hovered, staring at me like I'd walked out of a dream she couldn't control. The servers entered, placing down the first course. chilled leek soup in elegant porcelain bowls rimmed in gold. Beside each plate, linen napkins I'd personally approved 2 days earlier. The seat beside my father, clearly meant for Haley, sat empty. I walked toward it. As I passed, the entire staff nodded, murmuring, "Good evening, Miss Morgan. Lovely to have you with us tonight." Ma'am. That word again. Ma'am. Haley flinched each time she heard it, like it was a reminder she was no longer the gravitational center of the room. And I didn't flinch at all. I sat at the head of my own table, the one they never thought I'd deserve. And for once, I didn't feel like a guest in my own life. I felt like the architect. The Winston suite was silent, except for the soft clink of silverware and the occasional hushed shuffle of servers moving in perfect rhythm. But beneath the perfect table setting, tension hummed like a wire stretched too tight. My father stared at the grilled salmon before him, the one I'd designed for the menu paired with a citrus beurre blanc from my personal recipe, and looked up slowly. "This is your recipe, isn't it?" he asked, voice low. "It is." He chewed carefully, then nodded. "It's excellent." That was it. No apology, no fanfare, just a nod. And yet after a lifetime of being overlooked, it landed like an earthquake. The rest of the dinner played out like a play where half the actors had just realized they'd misread their scripts. Every bow of the waiter, every crisp Miss Morgan from the sommelier, every deference to my preference was a mirror being held up to my family's face. And they didn't like what they saw. My mother tried to reassemble composure, asking the sommelier if the wine pairings were her idea, like she was grasping for an anchor. I simply smiled. "I've worked with that vineyard for years," I said. "They custom bottled the Pinot for tonight." She blinked. "You're very thorough." I raised my glass slightly. "I've had time to learn." The second course was served. Slow braised lamb over truffled polenta. Haley finally spoke. "So you've been doing all this," she said softly, not making eye contact while we thought you were still working the front desk. "Yes," I replied, "and not that there's anything wrong with that." She nodded once tight. "I didn't know," she said. "I know." Another pause. Then she muttered, "Guess I should have asked." A deeper silence followed, one that wasn't awkward but heavy with meaning. "You still should." I didn't say it out loud. I didn't need to. As dessert arrived, a lavender creme brulee glazed in front of each guest. Small envelopes were placed discreetly beside the plates. Complimentary weekend stays at one of my newer properties. A thank you gift, planned long before this night became what it was. My father turned the envelope in his hands. "This is from you," I nodded. "Athena's gift. To you. To our guests." He cleared his throat. "You didn't have to." I looked at him. "You never asked what I was building," I said quietly. "So I built it alone. But I always knew one day the people who erased me would have to walk into a room I created." My mother's hand trembled slightly as she sipped her wine. "I wasn't trying to diminish you," she said. "You didn't have to try," I replied. The table fell quiet again, but this time it wasn't uncomfortable. It was clarity settling like dust after a storm. Mr. Callahan raised his glass. "To Miss Morgan," he said, "the kind of leader this industry needs, and the kind of woman any family should be proud of." There were murmurs of agreement from the other guests, distant relatives, family, friends, people who had greeted me with bland politeness, now couldn't meet my eyes. I didn't need their praise. But I did need that moment. I had spent my entire life being talked over, explained, away, patted on the head by people who thought status was louder than substance. But here in the very walls, I restored from rot and ruin, I had reversed the equation. After dinner, guests began to leave, some with polite smiles, some with awkward nods. A few offered quiet congratulations, unsure if it was welcome. My father lingered near the bar, swirling the last of his bourbon in the crystal glass. "I always thought you'd find your way," he said finally. "I didn't lose it," I replied gently. "You just refused to see where it led." He nodded. No defense, no excuses, just recognition. That was enough for now. As the room emptied, I stood alone at the table, running my fingers over the white orchids. Their petals soft, their beauty intentional. The seat beside me, the one Haley once expected to claim, remained empty. That too was fitting. I turned and walked through the doors, into the lobby, into the silence of something I had created with my bare hands. The quartet had packed up. The candles had burned low. The air in the lobby of Athena on Fifth had shifted, still elegant, still composed, but now holding the residue of revelation. My heels echoed softly across the marble as I walked alone past guests who no longer whispered behind my back because they didn't know where to place me. Now, they knew. I paused beneath a framed photograph in the lobby taken at Athena's grand reopening. A younger version of me stood in front of the restored doors, arms crossed, chin slightly lifted. No one else in the frame, just me. Back then it hadn't been pride on my face, it had been defiance, because no one had believed in the vision except me. I sat on the velvet bench beneath the photo, slowly exhaling as the adrenaline drained from my body. The weight of years, the labor of invisibility, the cost of being underestimated. Avery appeared beside me, holding a folded linen napkin with something inside. She didn't speak, just placed it gently in my hand and stepped back. Inside, a handwritten note from Leo, our head waiter. "Your family dines well, but you command the room with respect." Leo, I smiled, because that was the thing. It had never been about applause or revenge. It was about no longer shrinking to fit into a frame someone else had built for me. For years I chased validation like air. Thought if I could prove I was enough, they'd see me. But the truth is, the only validation I needed was already inside me. Tonight wasn't a victory over them. It was a reclamation of myself. I wasn't just the daughter who disappointed them. I was the woman who built something permanent from the ashes of their disregard. And now they'd have to sit with that. If they wanted access to me again, they'd have to come through the front doors, like everyone else. The lobby doors opened behind me. I didn't turn immediately. Heels, familiar, careful. Haley. She stepped in alone, arms crossed, but unsure, her posture tentative in a way I'd never seen. "I stayed behind," she said. Her voice didn't carry the sharpness it usually did. "I guess I just wanted to understand how you did all this. Without us." I turned to face her, because I had to. She nodded once, almost too small to notice. "I underestimated you." I stood slowly, eyes level with hers. I didn't need to gloat. I didn't need to say I told you so. I know I said. Haley hesitated again. The next words weren't easy for her. Is it too late to start asking the right questions? I considered that. Not out of vengeance, but out of truth. Then I stepped aside and gestured toward the atrium. "Let's walk." Have you ever been underestimated by your own family, only to rise in silence? Share your story in the comments. And if this hit home, like, subscribe, and stay tuned, because sometimes the quietest people build the loudest legacies.